Okay, here we are with Paul Janka, and he was nice enough to do an interview with me.
My pleasure. Happy to do it, yeah.
So now that I'm in London.
That's right. This young man has traveled far and wide. We're here in North London in the 15th century churchyard. And we definitely look, if someone saw us, we look definitely sketchy. We're recording something. But anyhow, this is an appropriate place to do a pickup interview. Go ahead. Question one.
All right. The first question is, when single, did you tell women you went to Harvard right off the bat, or waited for them to find out?
No, I never mentioned that. I never used that. It's like we call that the H-bomb when you drop that. I never used that in my pickups. And maybe once I met the girl at a lounge later, sometimes if it was appropriate, I'd try to weave that in. But first of all, that's a try-hard technique. I felt if I do that, I would often put the girl off. And I had enough other techniques that I didn't need to mention that. So no, I didn't. And actually, just on a note, I tried to keep my private life sort of private from these booty call chicks because I didn't. I mean, you know, because you're living the lifestyle. It's like if you meet a lot of girls and there's a lot of churn, it's probably best that they don't all know everything about you.
Yeah.
In terms of track, I don't know. It can cause problems, I think. So I try to keep it pretty light.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right. Number 2 is, do you think looks play a part in a man's success with women?
Yes, definitely. So, I mean, women are visual, and they can see a guy right away. I will say, I think the reverse is more true. I think for guys, how a woman looks is even more important in terms of getting his attention, like a sexy girl. But definitely, even women pay attention a lot to looks. But I think there's a couple things to say there. If you're good looking and you have nothing to say to get her engaged, then you'll fall flat. And then a guy who's sort of average looking or not even that good looking, you have examples like Roman Polanski and Vincent Cassel and all these guys who've had beautiful women. They have so much personality that they compensate, and the girl's just so engaged, she's having so much fun that they overlook it. Or it's a novelty. If you think about a stunning girl, she's probably had a lot of really handsome model-type men in her life, but she meets this sort of more unusual guy who's really clever and funny, and she, you know, why doesn't she take a punt and see what that's like? So, but and the other thing I'd say about looks is, it's true, but even a not so good looking guy can still improve his game. So if he's like, just to be crass, like a 3 out of a 10, he can still work on his technique so that he can start betting 5s and 6s and 7s consistently. Because before he had any technique, he probably was like hardly getting laid with 3s. So any guy can improve where he's from, I think.
Yeah, I was also going to say something.
Well, what do you think?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about here in London, since I've been gaming every day since I've gotten here. There's a lot of guys here that are like a lot better looking than most of the guys in New York. But
you think so? It's interesting. Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe you're right.
Where I've been, but they're very aggressive and they're not calibrated and they're just kind of annoying in a way that it just like totally turns them off. At least that's what I've observed. But
interesting. I mean, well, I think one of your questions is about English versus New York. I mean, there is a different cultural cue here, so we can get into that. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of good-looking guys with no game who don't really do that well. It's true.
Like, I think there's like being like attractive and like I don't know, classically good-looking, and then you got being sexy, and you don't have to be like super attractive to be sexy, you know.
There's a difference, and then, you know, having edge and having style, that all plays into it for sure.
Yeah, like I met this girl one time, and she was we were talking about Justin Timberlake, and Justin Timberlake, she said she doesn't think he's good looking at all, but he's sexy because he knows how to move, he's confident. But yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine. Man.
But anyway, 3 is, do you think it's important to make a good first impression?
Yeah, I mean, in my method, and I'm sure if yours is similar, you probably agree, I would think, is that you only really get one shot with a girl on the street, right? So in New York, you're walking past a stranger, she's hot. New York's a big city. You have a window there, I don't know, 30 seconds or 45 seconds to make an impression, and it better be good. It's not like you can fumble it and then chase her down and say, no, let me get a second try. So yeah, you have to have a strong first impression.
Yeah, especially for day game, right?
Day game in particular, yeah.
Okay, number 4 is, what are some noticeable differences between American women and European women?
I mean, it's such a generalization.
Yeah, it is, right? Sorry.
I mean, American women have one thing I notice when I go back to the States is they have a very high-pitched nasally voice, which I guess I was used to when I lived there, but now it's sort of arresting when I hear it. And I think this is also a gross generalization, so I don't want to get flack for this, but what I have noticed is I do think that European women handle feminism better. Actually, I wouldn't even say English women, but like continental European women, French, Swiss, Italian, French and Swiss, and they're quite feminine. And whereas I think a lot of American women have adopted a much more aggressive sort of masculine ethos, and so that they can be physically attractive, but I find oftentimes that sort of hard-hitting, aggressive masculine vibe from a girl quite shocking and not sexy. But I think it's partly due to the fact that, you know, women have more opportunities now. They're going after in the workplace. So I think American women have, as a general rule, have decided to sort of play at it like a sport, and they've adopted male qualities. But I find that, which has helped them in work and stuff and income, but I find that not so sexy with like in a relationship vibe.
Yeah. Kind of. I think I meet a lot of Irish women like that in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just like, they have this like
swagger.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying. It's a total turn off actually, but not all of them. Like, not to generalize, like you said, but the majority of women in America, I feel like they're.
I would say Spanish. You mentioned Miami earlier. Like Spanish women are sort of different than that. I think the Latina feminine vibe is very strong, and I think that I've seen generally Latinas in America are still ultra feminine. You know, so that's one thing I've noticed. But I don't want to. You can get into trouble making these mass generals, and anyone can be any way, is the truth. But these are sort of broad strokes I've noticed.
Most of the women I date these days are Latinas.
Yeah.
And that's one of the qualities. That's one of the reasons why. But anyway, do you think either are better for long-term relationship? Is that too much of a generalization?
What, European or Brit or American women?
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on the guy. I think, you know, the type of guy will sometimes choose an opposite. So maybe quite a subservient sort of effeminate man who's straight might like a ball buster girl who's like really tough, and she's like corporate, you know, and she's a VP or a CEO, and he likes that take charge attitude. But for him, those type of women are a real turn on. But I'm not that type of guy, so I prefer the softer, more. Although I like women with initiative. I don't like, you know, wallflowers or girls that just sit there and don't do anything. But always to maintain a girlishness or a femininity for me is important.
Yeah,
but,
I'm the same way.
Oh yeah. But I think ultimately it comes down to the guy and the girl. I mean, people form all kinds of relationships at work, so I don't. There's plenty of men in the world, I'm sure, that love. In fact, a lot of Brits love American women for their directness, because Americans are quite direct, as opposed to, let's say, British. They like the American directness. They like the voice that I was just critical of. They like the aggressive nature of some American women. So all this stuff that I'm not, because I was born there, not as keen on, they like. So differences attract.
And also, like, a lot of American women like the British accent.
British accent, so then they have that, yeah.
I kind of noticed that here, that a lot of, not a lot, but a few women, they like the American accent also.
Yeah, that's worked for you?
That's what people have been telling me as I've been going out. I've been having like a few conversations with girls on it. Alright. Anyway, next question. If single, how would you approach a London girl as opposed to a girl in New York?
That's an interesting question. I mean, when I first moved here, I still had a lot of swagger and stuff. I moved here in 2011, so and I had just moved from New York, so I could really compare the two dating markets better. And the thing I remember is that, like, New York girls, you can be really blunt and really direct in general, and there's an anonymity to New York. In other words, a lot of people are from elsewhere. Maybe they don't have a lot of connections, so two strangers can meet in a grocery store and hit it off. Like, the girl's not going to ask you, like, do you have friends in common? What's your background necessarily? and you can kind of, if you have a good vibe, you can go with it. And in that sense, I think New York women are risk takers. They're willing to, like, if a guy's making them have a good time, that they don't ask, they just go with it. In Britain, from what I've never been single here, but from what I've heard from my single friends and what I've noticed is that, you know, there are exceptions because there's a lot of foreigners here. But if you're talking about British, they really are insular in the sense that they kind of want to date people that they went to grammar school and college and university with, and that live in their neighborhood and that go to the same. Here, it's still a bit of a class system, so go to the same like upper class clubs or lower class, whatever. And if you don't fit that background and you just pop up as a random dude, they might be amused by you, but I think British women would be less likely to take a guy seriously unless he ticked enough more boxes. It's more formal.
It's like socialist.
Yeah. There's more. They're more guarded, I think.
Yeah, I totally noticed that with Irish people also. All right, next question. When single, what were your objectives when carrying on a conversation with a woman you were attracted to?
Well, I outlined this in my book, but I like the industrial approach. So I met a lot of girls really quickly, tried to get the number, tried to get them flirty and like having a good time in the pickup, usually very quick, 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. And then, so my phone was full of girls' numbers, and then I would text them during the week and try to get them initially back to a lounge for a date, and then later I'd sort of cut that part out and just back to my place. And it's a long time ago, it's over 10 years ago. I mean, so my life's very different today, my libido's much down, and I'm married and stuff, but so I'm not as like, when I talk about my former life, it's sort of surprising me. I was so driven to get laid all the time. I was so hungry for it. And I think it's sort of one of those things that if you get a taste of it, it just fuels it. You want more girls, more hotter girls, more action, more sex. Exactly. And when you tail it off, you kind of lose, you can do other stuff with your life, which I have done. But when I was in it and constantly feeding that, it was like a frenzy. So yeah, it was just about like, you know, and the sexier the girl, or more provocative, the more I like wanted to pounce on her. But of course, in New York, you can't just jump on someone on the street. So I had a whole system to try to get them back to my place.
All right, let me just. All right, and now on to the next question. Okay, do you have any upcoming projects you want to share?
Yeah, I'm working on something called, well, it's live now. It's called No Man Left Behind. And just for your listeners or your audience, so I kind of retired in 2011. I'd been hustling chicks for about a decade. So I'm 43 now. And I met a girl, and I've always wanted to be a family man and have children and all that. So we got serious. We got married a few years ago, and I've been living in London for 7 years. We got married. We have a daughter. So all that has been a new journey, and it's been very different than pickup for a lot of. I mean, the whole attitude of being a pickup artist and banging a lot of chicks, all that had to like change. I mean, when you're dealing with one person, you can't. They're not. The thing about being single is every girl's expendable. If she doesn't cooperate, you can just get rid of her and get the next one. And obviously, if you're married with kids, the price tag of doing that is massive. I mean, most guys don't want to walk away from their family. So I had to learn a whole new set of skills, and I also had to apply what I'd learned to choose a woman, because I had a lot of women in my life when I wanted to settle down. So my experience selecting a woman for marriage and motherhood, transitioning to being a husband, and then now having a child and being a father, I've developed a whole program around that. It's very different. It's called No Man Left Behind, and if you're interested, you can sign up for sort of a trial or a newsletter at pauljанка.com, and you can see what it's about. It's mostly for more mature men who are at an age where they want to, usually it's for guys who've had success shagging girls and dating, and they want something new. Maybe they're ready to have a kid, or they're ready to settle down. So that's what I'm selling now. And
there's going to be a link in the description also.
Cool.
All right. Yeah, I have a lot of questions. Honestly, I did this because I wanted to like pick your brain a little too.
Sure.
All right. Anything you would like to suggest for those new to day game and night game?
I don't know, everything pretty much as we were talking about before. You said, you read my book and it was powerful. I mean, most of the stuff that I wrote in Attraction Formula is still true today. I have, and I actually include this in my new course, because it's a 12-week course. The first 6 weeks are about pickup and sex, and then the second 6 weeks is about relationships and marriage and fatherhood. So I still go over my old material, and I've introduced a new thing called DNT, decision node theory, and no one in the community is talking about this. And what happened was, the reason it's not included in my earlier stuff, I taught this, I held seminars, I coached hundreds of guys, and at a certain point I realized, I was on the phone with a guy coaching him over the phone, and I realized, why does this guy keep fucking up? Like, I'm giving him all the tools, and he's not moving to the next step. Like, he can't even get the number. Once in a while he gets the number, like he struggles to set up the date or whatever. And I realized that each of these decision nodes, he hasn't mastered it. He's like trying to move ahead while he hasn't really mastered the previous decision node. So I came up with this concept, and guys love it, called DNT, decision node theory. And basically you break down your whole game from like first seeing the girl to the first approach, all the way to what you say, how to get the number, all the way to the lounge, back to your place, last minute resistance, and the bed, even sex, and then what you deal with her afterwards when she's part of your harem or your bench. And I broke it down into 20 plus micro steps, and then I examined each of those nodes and say, look, if you're not doing X, Y, and Z and you're getting it wrong, don't move forward. You need to master this. And we keep working that node till the guy has mastery, and then he moves forward. So basically, if you do that and you link them all together, then your game is airtight. And once you have each, but most guys, if you can identify where you're going wrong, then you can work on it. It's just like a sport, you know. A guy's shooting free throws. He's not following through right. So the coach will videotape him and then be like, "Look at your follow through. We just got to work on that for weeks." And then all of a sudden his game comes together. Same idea. So that's probably one of the more sophisticated things I'm teaching now.
So it's very technical.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I might want to look at that too. If you're willing to.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Any advice for those that are more experienced?
I mean, don't get a girl pregnant and try to avoid STDs. I think, as you probably know, once you get good, it's all logistics. I mean, a guy who's out there after a certain while, he's got a lot of confidence. He's got a quick trigger finger, so he's always approaching stuff, especially if you're in a place like New York. One piece of advice that I used to tell guys, if you're super serious about this, maybe you can corroborate this. But what I would say is, one thing I would say is, maybe you can corroborate this. If you're super serious about game and you're unattached, like you're able to move, you should move to New York City if you're American, because to really hone, you need to work with a huge supply of new girls, because you're going to fuck up a lot. You need to sharpen your edge with a steady supply of chicks. And New York's the best. They're constantly like coming out of the woodwork. So, but there's some other cities too. But locate yourself in a high density city and then just approach it. And once you get good, you got the confidence. Your trigger finger's quick. You're not missing opportunities. The thing ultimately comes down to logistics, as any player will tell you. It's like you've got a live girl. She's into it. She's ready. You've turned her on with your conversation. It's like on, and the issue is like getting her back somewhere private where you can have sex, like quickly to your place or a hotel, or get her in a cab, whatever it is. That starts to become. When I was at my peak, that was how my thinking was. I always knew I could get the girl's attention. I mean, usually, and get her turned on. The issue was like, all right, how do I close this? Like, we're in the middle of like the street here. I've got to think like, what's the nearest alley or Central Park? I had action in Central Park or back to. So I was constantly thinking about logistics, which really any player, his game ultimately comes down to logistics. How quickly he can transition the girl somewhere private.
Yeah, I had some fun in Central Park too. I don't want to tell you details, but
okay.
Yeah. With all of your experience, how would you handle a woman that doesn't want to give out her number upon the first request?
Well, I used to be pretty persistent. I'd be like, fine, and then I'd keep talking to her and try to make her laugh, and then I'd be like, come on, what are you talking about? We're just going to have coffee. What are you so precious about? And I would keep like trying to wear her down. It doesn't always. It's not like every single girl giving her a number, but persistence, humor. Get her to, basically, if a girl's starting to have a good time, then she's thinking, because women like when they get attention, even hot girls, if they get the right kind of attention. And then she said, you know what, this guy's fun, whatever, I'll have a coffee with him. Then you're in. And then I try to, basically like a wedge, you get the tip in, then try to like open up the relationship. Then her to agree to meet a coffee, and then later at night, and da-da-da-da-da. So.
Yeah, I remember watching this one video, I think it was like a blonde chick, or there's two girls sitting down,
Oh yeah.
And they were like, "Oh, I just saw you talk to that girl over there, and you were trying to pick her up." And you were like, "No, actually, I know her, and I was just giving her advice about something or something along those lines."
You gotta be quick on your feet when you know.
Yeah, when I saw that, I was like, "Yeah, this guy knows what he's doing." All right, next. All right, last question. Is there anything else you would like to mention?
Well, it's a pleasure meeting you. I'm happy you came out here, and I know you got a European tour planned. It's exciting. And maybe when you get back, you can tell me what you think of European women after sampling a few on the continent. No, it's been good, and it's good to meet you. I've been following you on Facebook. I know you've been doing well and have a successful business yourself. And you're bona fide. I mean, you're the real deal, so it's good to meet you. And I'm happy we could do this.
Yeah, me too. And this is Paul Janka. Thanks for watching this, everyone, and we're out.
glorybehighlights.com